The warmest place during a brutal winter storm wasn't a palace or mansion, it was inside a pirate ship. How did history's most feared criminals crack the code to perfect sleep while everyone else froze? Life at sea during the golden age of piracy wasn't exactly a luxury cruise. When temperatures dropped and icy winds whipped across the deck, survival became the name of the game. Pirates weren't just good at stealing treasure, they were masters at reading the ocean's moods and timing their rest to avoid freezing to death. These seafaring criminals developed an almost supernatural ability to predict when the coldest part of the night would hit. Makes sense when your life depends on it, right? They'd study cloud formations, watch how the wind shifted, and feel the air pressure changes that signaled brutal cold was coming. The smart crews kept detailed logs, not just of their raids and loot, but of weather patterns. They'd scribble down notes about when the temperature usually dropped hardest, which direction the worst winds came from, and how long the bone-chilling periods lasted. But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates actually scheduled their sleep around these freezing spells. While Navy sailors followed rigid military schedules, pirates had the freedom to be strategic about their rest. They'd catch their shut-eye during the warmer evening hours before that brutal 3 a.m. cold snap hit. Senior pirates, the ones who'd survived multiple winters at sea, became experts at reading incoming storms. They could smell a temperature drop hours before it arrived. The crew would watch for what they called chill hours, those deadly periods when the wind cut through everything and hypothermia became a real threat. During these times, they'd huddle in whatever shelter they could find, staying awake and moving to keep their blood flowing. Then, when the worst passed, they'd finally allow themselves to sleep. This wasn't just about comfort, it was pure survival math. Pirates who timed their sleep wrong often didn't wake up at all. The ocean doesn't care about your reputation or how much gold you've stolen. One night of sleeping through the wrong weather could turn a feared pirate into a frozen corpse. Weather watching became such a crucial skill that experienced pirates were valued as much for their meteorological knowledge as their fighting abilities. They'd teach younger crew members to feel barometric pressure changes in their bones and recognize the subtle signs that meant find shelter now or die. These timing strategies kept entire crews alive through winters that would have killed less observant sailors. Well, surviving the cold was only half the battle. Even with perfect timing, pirates still needed to create the right sleeping setup to make it through those frigid nights, and that's where their next clever adaptation came into play. Sleeping on the deck of a pirate ship was like choosing to nap on a frozen concrete floor that's also moving. Not exactly comfortable, right? Smart pirates figured out that hammocks weren't just a luxury, they were survival gear. The deck was always wet, always cold, and always ready to steal your body heat the moment you laid down. Pirates who tried sleeping directly on those wooden planks often woke up sicker than they started. Some didn't wake up at all. Hammocks lifted them above this death trap, creating a buffer zone between their bodies and the icy ship floor. But here's where it gets interesting. Those hammocks weren't just keeping pirates dry. They were working with the ship's movement instead of against it. When waves rocked the vessel, hammocks swayed gently with the motion. Pirates sleeping on deck got thrown around like dice in a cup. Every roll of the ship meant their bodies slammed against hard wood, making rest impossible and bruises guaranteed. The swaying motion actually helped distribute body heat more evenly throughout the hammock's fabric. Think about it. When you're perfectly still, heat pools in some spots while others stay cold. The gentle rocking motion kept warm air circulating around a pirate's body, creating a more consistent temperature. Not exactly a heated blanket, but better than nothing when you're in the middle of the ocean. Then there's the draft problem that most people never consider. Cold air sweeps across ship decks like an invisible river, staying low and fast. Pirates sleeping at deck level got hit with this constant stream of freezing wind. Hammocks hung higher up, where the air moved differently and the worst drafts couldn't reach. Let's not forget the practical benefits that went beyond temperature control. Rats, cockroaches, and other ship pests traveled along the deck looking for warm bodies to bother. Hammocks created a barrier that made it harder for these unwanted visitors to reach sleeping pirates. Nobody wants to wake up with a rat using their chest as a highway. The weird part is how hammocks also protected pirates from water damage during storms. When waves crashed over the deck, pirates and hammocks stayed mostly dry, while anyone sleeping below got soaked. Wet clothes in cold weather was basically a death sentence at sea. Pirates who mastered hammock sleeping had a serious advantage over those who didn't, but even the best hammock couldn't solve every cold weather problem. When winter storms hit hard, pirates needed more than just elevated sleeping arrangements. They needed creative solutions that most people would never think of. When your bedroom is a freezing deck surrounded by endless ocean, regular blankets don't cut it. Pirates figured out something that sounds completely backwards but actually worked like magic. They soaked their canvas sheets and fabric scraps in seawater, then let the brutal cold do the rest. The wet fabric would freeze solid within hours, creating makeshift walls harder than wood. These frozen barriers blocked those knife-sharp winds that could wake you up shivering in the middle of the night. Think about it. Ocean winds are relentless, but a wall of ice? That's nature fighting nature. Here's where it gets clever. The frozen fabric didn't just block wind, it created pockets of still air behind it. Still air warms up fast when your body heat has nowhere to escape. Pirates essentially built themselves little warming chambers using nothing but wet cloth and freezing temperatures. But this wasn't some brilliant pirate invention. Mountain climbers and Arctic explorers had been using similar tricks for years. Smart pirates picked up the technique during port visits or from crew members who'd survived harsh winters on land. Knowledge traveled fast in the pirate world, especially when it meant the difference between life and death. The tricky part was getting it just right. Too thin and the frozen fabric would crack or blow away in strong gusts. Too thick and it became impossible to move or position properly. Pirates learned to use multiple layers of medium-weight canvas, creating flexible but sturdy wind barriers. Setting these up required teamwork and timing. The fabric had to be positioned before it froze completely solid, which meant working in bitter cold with numb fingers. Pirates would stretch the wet canvas between rope lines or ship fixtures, then wait for the ocean's chill to turn their makeshift curtains into protective shields. The weird part is how effective this actually was. Modern survival experts still recommend similar techniques in extreme cold environments. Pirates accidentally stumbled onto solid science, creating thermal barriers using available materials and environmental conditions. These frozen fabric walls also served double duty during storms. They deflected spray and sleet that would otherwise soak sleeping pirates, keeping them drier as well as warmer. Dry clothes meant better insulation, which meant better chances of surviving until morning. What made this technique truly valuable was its simplicity. No special tools, no rare materials, just water, fabric, and patience. Any crew could set up these barriers whenever temperatures dropped dangerously low. Of course, building walls of ice was just one part of staying warm. Pirates had to think about what they wore to bed too, and their clothing choices were pretty extreme. When the temperature dropped to bone-chilling levels, pirates threw fashion right out the porthole. Their survival strategy? Wear absolutely everything they owned to bed. We're talking about turning yourself into a walk-in closet before hitting the hammock. Most sailors back then would change into lighter sleeping clothes, thinking it was more comfortable. Pirates laughed at this idea. They'd pile on thick coats, wrap scarves around their necks, pull caps down over their ears, and basically transform into human burritos. Multiple shirts layered under heavy jackets, 2 or 3 pairs of pants if they had them, socks stacked on socks until their boots barely fit. The weird part is they never took off damp clothes at night either. Sounds gross, right? But there was actual logic behind this madness. Wet fabric against skin might feel terrible, but your body heat would eventually warm up that moisture, creating an extra insulating layer. Taking off damp clothes meant losing that trapped warmth and starting the heating process all over again. Smart pirates kept spare clothing specifically for this layering technique. They'd collect extra shirts from raids, trade for additional coats at ports, and hoard fabric scraps like treasure. The more layers, the better their chances of surviving brutal nights without freezing solid. But here's where pirate brotherhood really showed up. Crews shared clothing with anyone who was sick, injured, or just naturally ran cold. A healthy pirate might hand over his extra coat to a feverish crewmate without thinking twice. They understood that keeping everyone alive meant keeping the ship functional. Dead pirates can't work the rigging or fight off attackers. The layering system worked so well that some pirates looked like stuffed scarecrows shuffling around the deck. Arms stuck out at weird angles because of all the fabric. Walking became awkward when you're wearing 4 shirts and 3 pairs of pants. Yet nobody complained about looking ridiculous when the alternative was freezing to death in your sleep. This bundling method created its own problems, though. Getting up quickly during emergencies became nearly impossible when you're wrapped in half your wardrobe. Pirates learned to sleep with weapons easily accessible, since fumbling through layers of clothing to reach a cutlass wasn't exactly practical during surprise attacks. The clothing strategy kept pirates warm, but it couldn't solve every cold weather challenge they faced. Sometimes individual warmth wasn't enough, and crews had to get creative about combining their body heat in ways that would make modern people pretty uncomfortable. When you're freezing your bones off in the middle of the ocean, personal space becomes a luxury you can't afford. Pirates figured this out fast. They'd pack themselves together like sardines in a can, and honestly, it saved lives. The math was simple. One pirate generates a certain amount of body heat. 10 pirates crammed together, that's 10 times the warmth bouncing around in a tight space. Their combined breath alone could raise the temperature in their sleeping quarters by several degrees. Makes sense, right? But this wasn't just random huddling. Experienced crew leaders actually organized these sleeping arrangements like they were planning battle formations. The strongest, warmest pirates went on the outside edges where the cold hit hardest. Weaker crew members got the prime real estate right in the middle of the human furnace. Sick pirates? They practically got VIP treatment, surrounded by the biggest, burliest guys who threw off heat like walking campfires. The weird part is how they made rotation schedules work with this system. Night watches meant some pirates had to leave the warm pile, which created gaps that let precious heat escape. Smart captains figured out that replacing one body immediately with another kept the heat trapped. They'd literally have replacement sleepers ready to fill empty spots the second someone got up for duty. Then there's the hammock situation, which gets interesting when you're trying to sleep close together. Pirates would string their hammocks so tight that they were practically touching. Some crews even rigged double-wide hammocks for the smallest members. Two scrawny pirates sharing one hammock meant both stayed warmer than sleeping alone. The rocking motion of the ship would sync up their hammocks, creating this bizarre synchronized sleeping dance. Let's not forget the unspoken rules that developed around this survival tactic. Nobody complained about snoring, weird sleeping positions, or someone's elbow in their ribs. Getting annoyed at your human heater was basically asking to freeze to death. Pirates who caused problems during group sleeping sessions found themselves banished to the cold edges real quick. The most successful pirate crews treated shared warmth like a military operation. They'd count bodies before settling in for the night, making sure nobody got left out in the cold. Literally. Because in those conditions, being excluded from the warm pile could mean not waking up at all. This buddy system kept entire crews alive through brutal winters at sea. But staying warm was only half the battle when rats, bugs, and thieves prowled the ship at night. Beyond keeping warm and dry, pirates had to deal with something that could ruin sleep faster than any storm: unwanted visitors. Rats, bugs, and thieves prowling around at night turned rest into a nightmare. Smart pirates developed tricks that sound bizarre today, but worked surprisingly well back then. Strong-smelling herbs became their secret weapon against pests. Mint, lavender, and dried tobacco got stuffed into small cloth pouches and hung near sleeping areas. The overpowering scent created an invisible barrier that rats absolutely hated. These weren't gentle garden herbs either. Pirates used whatever they could steal or trade for in port. Tobacco worked especially well because it was cheap and incredibly pungent when crushed up. But the real genius move? Metal rat guards wrapped around hammock ropes. Think of them like upside-down metal bowls that rats couldn't climb over. Pirates learned this trick from merchant sailors who were tired of waking up with rodents dropping onto their faces. The guards worked so well that even Navy ships started copying the idea. Then there's the food situation, which gets really interesting. Pirates would tie their daily rations directly to their bodies before sleeping. Sounds uncomfortable, right? Well, it solved two problems at once. First, nobody could steal your breakfast while you slept. Second, keeping food close to your body added extra warmth during those freezing nights. Some crews got creative with mint and other herbs, sprinkling crushed leaves directly into their sleeping spots. The smell kept bugs away, but it also masked the less pleasant odors that built up when dozens of unwashed sailors lived in cramped quarters for months. Pirates weren't exactly known for their hygiene standards, The weirdest part might be how they dealt with lice and fleas. Instead of trying to get rid of them completely, experienced pirates would rub strong herbs on their skin before bed. The bugs would jump to someone else who smelled better. Not exactly noble, but survival rarely is. What's fascinating is how these simple tricks spread throughout pirate crews. New recruits learned from veterans, and successful methods got passed from ship to ship when crews met at ports. These weren't written instructions. Everything was shared through word of mouth and trial and error. Of course, all the herbs and rat guards in the world couldn't help if your body was already freezing cold when you tried to sleep. Pirates needed ways to warm themselves up before climbing into those hammocks, which meant getting creative with exercise routines that worked on a rocking ship. Getting your blood pumping before bedtime sounds backwards by today's standards, but pirates had figured out something that actually works. While we're told to avoid exercise before sleep, these seafaring outlaws knew that a few minutes of movement could mean the difference between a miserable night and actually getting some rest. Pirates weren't doing CrossFit routines on deck, but they had their methods. Simple squats by the mast, arm circles that looked ridiculous but felt amazing, or marching in place like they were going somewhere important. The goal wasn't to break a sweat, it was to get blood flowing to fingers and toes that had gone numb from hours of cold ocean air. Then, there's the practical side of ship life that worked in their favor. Climbing up to check the rigging or scanning the horizon for enemy ships meant your muscles were already working. Pirates turned these necessary tasks into pre-sleep warmers. Smart captains would rotate these duties so everyone got a chance to heat up before hitting their hammocks. But here's where it gets interesting. Night watch duties were split into short shifts specifically to prevent anyone from staying cold too long. A pirate might spend 30 minutes on lookout, then duck below deck to warm up before sleep. This wasn't just about comfort. Frozen sailors make terrible fighters when trouble shows up at dawn. Combat training sessions served double duty too. Sword practice, wrestling matches, or even playful brawls got hearts pumping and muscles generating heat. Pirates would sometimes stage mock battles right before bedtime, not because they loved fighting that much, but because 20 minutes of action could keep them warm for hours afterward. The weird part is how they timed everything. Pirates learned that exercising too close to sleep time made them restless, but doing it too early meant the warmth wore off. Most crews found their sweet spot about 15 to 30 minutes before climbing into hammocks. Just enough time for the heart rate to settle while keeping that internal furnace burning. What made the system work was the group mentality. When one pirate started doing his pre-sleep routine, others joined in. Peer pressure kept everyone moving, even when they felt too tired or cold to bother. This heating trick was just one piece of their survival puzzle, though. All the exercise in the world couldn't help if you were stuck in freezing waters for months on end. The smartest pirate crews had learned something even more valuable about escaping winter's grip entirely. Most pirates weren't stuck following government orders like Navy ships. They could sail wherever they wanted. And guess what they wanted most during winter? Warm water. While naval crews froze their boots off sailing predetermined routes, pirates made a smart choice. They'd pack up and head south when temperatures dropped. The Caribbean became their winter vacation spot, except with more sword fighting and treasure hunting. Historical shipping records from the 1600s and 1700s tell an interesting story. Pirate attacks in warm southern waters shot up dramatically during winter months. Coincidence? Not really. These guys were following the heat like snowbirds heading to Florida. But here's the clever part. This wasn't just about comfort. Pirates who chased warmer waters had better survival rates. Their crews stayed healthier. Fewer men died from cold-related illnesses. Less frostbite meant more effective fighters. Makes perfect business sense when your business involves dangerous encounters. The temperature difference was massive, too. While ships in northern Atlantic waters dealt with near-freezing conditions, Caribbean pirates enjoyed temperatures in the 70s and 80s. That's like the difference between sleeping in a freezer versus a cozy bedroom. Smart pirate captains planned these migrations months ahead. They'd time their northern raids for late summer, then gradually work their way south as autumn arrived. By December, they'd be enjoying tropical breezes instead of icy storms. Then there's the practical sailing advantage. Warm water meant fewer ice-related hazards, no frozen rigging to deal with. Ropes stayed flexible. Canvas sails didn't crack from cold. Even the ship's wood expanded properly, reducing leaks that plagued vessels in frigid waters. Naval forces couldn't chase them as effectively either. Government ships had to stick to their assigned patrol areas. Pirates could simply sail away from winter, leaving their enemies behind to freeze. The food situation improved dramatically in warmer climates, too. Fresh tropical fruits prevented scurvy better than stored supplies. Local fish were easier to catch. Trading with Caribbean settlements meant hot meals instead of frozen hardtack. Some pirate crews became seasonal migrators. They'd spend summers raiding busy northern shipping lanes, then retreat to warm southern bases for winter. The Bahamas became a popular pirate winter hangout for exactly this reason. This migration strategy worked so well that it became standard pirate wisdom. Experienced captains taught newcomers the importance of following favorable weather patterns. Why suffer through brutal cold when you could sail to paradise? Weather wasn't just something pirates endured, it was something they outsmarted. By choosing their sailing routes wisely, they turned winter from a deadly enemy into just another navigation decision.